They contribute in Morocco, it's about 40% from irrigated land. The farmers are using groundwater. The groundwater also is the unique alternative, especially during the drought period. So groundwater, they have a lot of advantage that we cannot find elsewhere. It's a free and easy access. They have also a good regulatory. It's a low cost even for CAPEX and APEX. So the groundwater management is a really very big problem for any policy of water policy. Why we are reaching an alarming level of overexploitation in a lot of aquifer in the region of the world. In Morocco, for example, we have 1 billion cubic meter deficit for groundwater. We are using more exploitation in groundwater. What I want to share with you, for example, to manage the groundwater, we're still looking for the good solution that could be accepted by all stakeholders. The aquifer agreement or the aquifer contract could be a good solution that we have tested in some aquifer parts in Morocco, and it's shown a conclusive result. What that means, aquifer contract, it's just like a financial and technical contract, so we stay on the table with all stakeholders, we define problem, and we define also solutions. So we try to make sure to agree between all stakeholders how to manage groundwater by the aquifer contract. So the aquifer contract could be a solution, a sustainable solution to manage groundwater. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Afilal, for sharing this very important model. Before summing up, I would like to turn the floor to the audience. Should there be any questions to Ms. Afilal regarding the Morocco experience or any question that you may wish? I see silence unless my eyesight is playing me games. Please, please. أنا آسف أعذرني يعني. Please, over to you.
Thank you very much. My another question. Would that Thank you again. That aquifer contract, I would guess it is designed for national aquifers, but most of the aquifers in the Middle East are transboundary. Would that still be applicable? And how can it be managed if it was really a conflict aquifer? Thank you.
The particularity of Morocco, we don't share water with our neighbors. All our water resources are inside the country. So we don't have any shared water with our neighbors, but it could be a good solution also to managing transboundary water between countries. I have learned about Senegal aquifer. They're trying to implement these tools to managing sharing water, transboundary water between other countries. It could be a good example to test it and implement it for transboundary aquifer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Afilal, and I think Mr. Muhammad knew the answer. He just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that these arrangements do have some limitations, but thank you for the question. But I would like, but again, this is a unique and a remarkable arrangement that you have when the majority of your water resources are internally generated, so you're self-sufficient in this way. But this is really important to highlight that 90% of the water uses in rural Morocco come from the groundwater. It underlines several sectors such as agriculture, tourism, industry, and of course potable purposes. And it was the main source that did, in a way, levy the challenging circumstances that Morocco had underwent during the drought years. Of course, it's easy to access, and the management is a critical component that has to be very well reflected in any policy. I also take note that Morocco is undergoing a deficit of 1 billion cubic meter per year of groundwater, which, and would of course be very interested perhaps in forthcoming gatherings to understand how is this being managed. And of course this technical and financial contract is really important and is really critical. So thank you so very much for that, Ms. Afila. Environmental conditions, you know, MENA is home of about 500 million people. Actually, yeah, home of over 500 million people. MENA is the world's most water-scarce region. It is really bad. We house 15 out of 20 of the world's most water-scarce countries, whereas the population in MENA is roughly about 2% of the world population. Sorry, about 6% of the world's population. We measly receive 2% of the world's renewable water resources. Our per capita share in this region is 1/6 of the global average. We're now a bit less than 1,200 cubic meter per year. Should the current conditions persist by 2050, two-thirds of the region, two-thirds of the countries in the region would hit absolute water scarcity, and we're expecting about 200 cubic meter per person per year, which is a serious red flag. Having said that, I would like to turn the floor to Ms. Nonay to share with us some of her wisdom regarding the current environmental conditions and how can we make the service providers, the sector, financially sustainable. I think we all know that one way or the other, as much as we like it or dislike it, the dollar drives the wagon, and for that we would like Ms. Nonay to share with us some of her wisdom. Over to you, Ms. Nonay.
Thank you, Omar, and thanks to His Royal Highness Anagua for organizing this wonderful event. Dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start first with the theme of the conference towards sustainable development for water and sanitation. And I work actually for the Vice Presidency of Sustainable Development at the World Bank. And I can tell you how much water and sanitation is at the core of sustainable development. So we really need to be tackling the issues that we have, especially when we are in the most water-scarce region in the world. So let me start a little bit with the big picture of the water insecurity that we have here in the Arab world, or MENA, as we call it in the World Bank. And that has been an existential threat for us, for our region, for several reasons. First, we're having a rapidly increase in urbanization that is affecting also agriculture. In many of the countries in our region, agriculture is very, very important. We're having issues with energy, and more important, climate change. If we don't do anything with climate change in this region, by 2050, we will have -6 to -14% effect in GDP in our countries. That is versus -0.5, 0.1, which is the average in the world. So as someone has said before, we have no choice. We need to tackle this. Second, we're having, as you heard in the prior panel, great tensions with transboundary waters, and thank you for bringing the question about conflict, right? About 60% of the water is being shared among the countries. And especially if we take the context of fragility and conflict that we see in the region, this makes things even worse. Just looking at the Mashrek, for example. Third, there is the demand for diesel, but that comes at a price, an economic price, but also an environmental cost. And it has implications for the affordability for the poorer households. Even if we take diesel out, the water sector is becoming increasingly energy intensive. For example, here in Jordan, 50% of the cost base is electricity for pumping and treating water. If you add to all of that the lack of accurate data that we have that is hampering both internal and shared water resource management. So the question is how this does affect, from the big picture, to the service provider and the service delivery when we have poor quality that is eroding the citizen trust. So let me give you a few figures here. Water quality in MENA is being reduced by unsustainable water consumption, bright discharge from desal pollution, and untreated wastewater. And let me reemphasize wastewater, because more than half of the wastewater collected in MENA is returned to the environment untreated, resulting in both health hazards and wasted water resources. And we're talking about wasted water resources, again, in the most water-scarce region in the world. 150 million people, so that's almost about 1/3, in rural areas are reliant on water resources that fail at least one of these tests: not on premises, not available when needed, not free from contamination. Only 1/4 of all the people that live in the Arab world have improved sanitation facilities from which excreta is safely disposed of. 1/4. Coverage and service quality is deteriorating, especially in countries under fragility and conflict situations, leading to disease outbreaks like we saw with the cholera in Yemen. And last but not least, the economic losses from inadequate water and sanitation are estimated to be 21 billion, with a B, per year, and are particularly high in countries that are conflict affected, like Iraq, Yemen, or Libya, between 2 to 5% of GDP losses. So again, we have no choice, but we need to act. We cannot stay with the status quo. And that brings me to the financial sustainability of the services providers, because that is the key. How do we make utilities to be creditworthy, to be financially sustainable? So let me tell you about the vicious circle that we are in the region. Basically, we have very low tariffs in water, opposed perhaps to energy, because as someone has said, life is a matter of life, right? And without water, we cannot have many things. And we're in a region that has one of the highest subsidies for water in the world. So you're having utilities that their clients think water should be free, that are used to be subsidized. So it all goes well, right? The government puts money in, I can operate the utility, I can give good quality to the water, my clients are happy, they pay the small bill, and we're all happy. Well, that's not how it works. Unfortunately, what is happening, especially right now, a lot of the countries are having a lot of fiscal pressure, and they have limited public funding. So either the subsidies are not coming on time, or there is not enough subsidies going into the sector. So what's happening to the utilities? They don't have enough money to maintain the systems. And what happens when they don't maintain? They're starting to have increase in non-revenue waters. Then the client is even less happy, so the little that they were paying, they're not paying it, so you can see the vicious circle. Eventually, we don't have any cost recovery, and operation and maintenance are not there. So what is the solution? Well, the solution is in all of us. We all need to get together, whether we're working in each of our countries or with the donors and utilities, to really strengthen them financially so they can be also operationally strong. And by doing that, we will be able to break eventually this vicious circle. But in order to do that, we also need to be talking, as we were mentioning before, at the level of the water sector governance. How do we improve the regulations? How do we set the sector policies? How do we build strong institutions that eventually these utilities can become creditworthy and they can get either domestic funding or commercial financing from the outside? So with that, I will leave it with that, but I think it's important that we realize that when we're talking about some of the countries in our region which are in a fragility situation, perhaps the most important thing we can do not is thinking about making an utility creditworthiness, but how do we rehabilitate, reconstruct, and make more resilient the water and sanitation services in those countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lunay. That was heavy. I have to admit that was heavy. Some of the figures that you have shared are like an eye-opener to all of us. Before I recap, I would like to see and check if there are, I see questions somebody read into my mind, so I will start. Yes, please, go ahead. Can we have,
Thank you very much for your presentation. And it also goes back to His Excellency Hassan Nasser's presentation about governance. Where can we start and to fix the process? Because on a national level we have barriers, and on an international level and financial level. So what can we do to make this process moving in the right direction? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Ms. Lunay, can we take all of the questions and then turn it? Okay, I think there was another question here. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Kemal Zobi. I am independent consultant. My question to Ms. Tony, World Bank. I really don't know what is the role of the World Bank. The people less educated say the role of the World Bank is to make pressures on the governments. The educated people say no, the World Bank is helping us. By that comes the other question. The project of the debt threat in Jordan, which was initiated in cooperation with the World Bank 15 years ago. That project is still sleeping. The people say this is a political decision of the World Bank not to move forward with it. I'd like to hear from you your opinion about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? Please.
Thank you. Comment that was heavy, but let me share with you what we've been doing for the past year, which I'll be presenting.